Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe, and I'm very excited to welcome J. Michael Trautmann to the podcast today to talk about Billy Jack, one of the most popular movies of 1971. How are we doing, J. Michael?
I'm great. I just watched this film yesterday so that I was fresh and ready to talk about it. And I'm excited to get into the film that was and is Billy Jack.
Yeah, as we talked about before we started recording, neither one of us had heard of this movie before. I'm doing a podcast on 50-year-old movies, and I was looking at the top 10 box office earners of 1971, and on Wikipedia, at number 2 of the year is this movie, which I had never heard of. And I was like, what is this all about? Kind of an intriguing franchise of movies that we're definitely going to discuss here on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm super shocked that it was even in the top 10, but let alone second. Anyway, yeah, I wish I would have known that before watching it, to be honest with you. I feel like I might have been, not to say that I wasn't geared to watch it, but if I would have known that this was the second highest grossing film of that year, and me knowing that A Clockwork Orange was also a 71 film, yeah, I would have been like, all right, let's see what we got here, for sure. But yeah, I'm glad it made its money.
Yeah, I should put an asterisk to this and that. In my research, I found that the movie did fairly well upon its initial release, but then Tom Laughlin, the co-writer, director, actor in the movie, he re-released the movie himself in 1973, and that's when the movie became a huge hit. So it did take two different release strategies to make all of that money. It was in 73 when it made a lot of its money. So it's like a weird story. Like it wasn't all at
Wow.
once. It was over the course of 2+ years that it did make all the money. Yeah.
Did you happen to see in your research when it was filmed?
I believe it was filmed at the end of 1969, released first in the early 71, and then it was in 73 where it really became a hit, which is very strange to me in that he didn't have a big studio behind him. How is one guy releasing a movie in theaters in 73 and it's like a huge moneymaker? That is just so confusing to me.
Well, I'm not necessarily too surprised because I watched this dude take on 40 guys with some kung fu in a park. And dude, I feel like this guy, once he sets his mind to doing something, he's going to get a bunch of people in 73 to watch his movie. And good on him, man. Good on him.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, without
So
any studio behind him.
before we get into more on the movie, J. Michael, I wanted to start by just asking you about your history with film as an actor, as a watcher of movies. Kind of what films do you remember really loving when you were growing up, and kind of what role has film played in your life?
I'm an actor because film. Obviously, we're in a day and age now where television is now short film, or even right, depending on how long you want to make your so-called episodes,
Mm-hmm.
a film in itself. So we've really kind of reached a good culmination between the two. There is no big difference right anymore. It's all being looked at with a very artistic eye. Most of it, for the most part, is being filmed the same way. Um, and yeah, geez, growing up, man, I love I love the big hits, right? I mean, I grew up on Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Um, Top Gun is my favorite film of all time. Love the hero story there. It's just brimming with self confidence, and yeah, I loved the way that it was shot. Um, Geez, other than that, man, a lot of things really kind of set me into wanting to be an actor with major films coming out like The Matrix, where we were really starting to see where our imaginations could go. Like you look at an early 77 film like Star Wars, and that's a lot of imagination happening on that screen. And you look at what we're doing right now in the same universe with the same right imagination, but look at the tools we're using, and man, it's it's getting pretty fantastic. I'm not on board with the deep fake stuff, but I guess I
Mm-hmm.
understand it in some parts. Um, Other than that, man, yeah, it's exciting to be a part of. It's definitely an industry that you need to have a thick skin for if you want to be a part of it. And yeah, it's a grind and a hustle that I try to appreciate as much as I can.
I wanted to ask you about Shameless, which is ending after 11 seasons. It's ending. What was your experience like on that show, J. Michael?
Oh geez, what a great show. Uh, as far as my resume is concerned, it really is a pin. Set me up for a lot of other opportunities. I was lucky enough to be able to be in multiple seasons, multiple episodes each season, and those residuals are wonderful.
I bet.
Other than that, I uh, I have nothing bad to say about it. I really enjoyed it. The writing was great. The character they gave me to play was choice, and so much fun. I the things that they had us do uh, were shameless, and it was great to film. It was awesome to be able to film it and go through that and pretend all that. And I'm glad they're going out on a bang on top. Season 11 is, geez,
It's
I
a
mean,
lot of
10
fun.
is a feat, right? And it's man, that's a lot of shameless. And
Yeah. And I do you remember this, J. Michael? I directed you in a short film in 2009. Do you remember that?
was it 2009?
Yeah.
Man, we're really dating ourselves here, huh? 2009. I do remember that. I remember shooting in the back of a minivan.
Yeah, it was me with my camera. It was you and Laura Siegel, and my pal Will Heiler was a homeless man. And we shot almost the entire
That's
movie.
right. Yeah.
We shot almost the
Yeah.
entire movie in a car, like in a van of some kind. and,
Yeah.
and I remember this part where you get like choked by the homeless guy, and you're going, like, I'm like, all right, J. Michael, he's choking you down to the bottom of the van. We shot it in like one
I had
hour. It was
fun.
very quick.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It
back
was
when I
super great. It was awesome. It was
when I was making short films, I mean, you could tell like how gifted you are as an actor just in that one night working with you. I was like, "Oh crap, this guy's going to go on to great things."
oh,
And
thank
you
you.
have.
I try. Thank you.
All right, so getting into our movie today, J. Michael, I've got a short synopsis I'm going to read for our listeners who might not know what it's all about. And then I've got a little bit of trivia about the movie. You can chime in with whatever you'd like as I go through these little bits
Awesome.
of background info. So, Tom Laughlin plays Billy Jack, a half breed American Navajo Vietnam veteran, martial arts master who takes up residence on a reservation outside a conservative Arizona town. He does everything in his power to defend a hippie themed freedom school, which is organized by its director, Gene, played by Dolores Taylor. When some of the students are refused service at an ice cream shop, Billy goes berserk on Bernard, the son of the county's corrupt political boss and his gang. Later, Bernard rapes Gene and murders a Native American student from the school, and Billy enacts his violent revenge. Is that kind of the gist of the plot that you got from it too?
I mean, maybe I mean, right? Let's look at the culture of that time. Maybe before we started recording and we were talking about it, yeah, maybe you're right. It could be a large part. I don't know, but it looked fantastic. I've been watching like Cobra Kai and stuff, and
Mm.
it's tough sometimes because it's like I get it. You guys are old and you don't really know karate that well. Um, but it shows, right? It shows a little bit. But in here, man, this guy was doing some moves, man. Like I was impressed. I was very impressed. As an avid kung fu watcher, I was like, oh, what a twist!
Yeah, this is the time I want to say Bruce Lee is very popular in the early 1970s.
Very
And
popular.
action
Yep.
movies are really getting off the ground in the early 70s. We're getting close to The French Connection with Gene Hackman. That came out at the end of 71. And then we're a couple years out from Death Wish, which is like a revenge action movie. So this is like right at the
Bronson.
beginning of the 70s kind of action movies. This is kind of like the first, I don't even think I watched a really good action film from 1970 for the podcast. This is kind of like the first one that has like some genuine action throughout. Um, So I don't know if you noticed this, J. Michael, but the co-writers, the director, didn't say the name Tom Laughlin, but it's him. He used a bunch of pseudonyms. So
I
he
love it. I adore that.
he directed the
That's
movie.
amazing.
Yeah, he directed the movie under the name T.C. Frank. He produced the movie himself under the name Mary Rose Salt, which is kind of interesting. And he and Dolores Taylor, who he was married to, who plays Jean, the founder of the school, the woman who cries in like 5 different scenes.
Right.
That was his wife. And they co-wrote the movie together under the names Frank Christina and Teresa Christina. So I guess that's like that Steven Soderbergh thing, right? Where I think he shoots most of his films under a different name. It's just like you don't want to put your name 18 times on the screen, which makes sense. Right?
Sure. I think it's amazing that he set that up. Sometimes I wish I could do that. Just be my whole entire everything and just have different names, and each one of my different personalities can run each one of those identities. That'd be fun.
So, J. Michael, if you
But good on
wrote,
him. I'm pretty impressed.
yeah, if you wrote, produced, directed, and starred in your own movie that you maybe like an independent film of some kind, would you have J. Michael Trautmann be on the screen 4 or 5 times, or would you give yourself pseudonyms?
Oh man, what a question. The narcissist in me is screaming I would have my name on there like 27
Just
times.
over and over.
Or it would just in the credits it would run all of the things without anyone's name, and then it would say really big in cards, all done by me. And then it'd be a giant picture of my face smiling.
I made so many films where I was just like the guy making it. So it'd be like, well, do I put myself 8 times or do I come up with a different name? It's kind of hard, right? You're like, well, I did do all the work, but I don't want to give myself all the credit, right?
Well, I guess if that's the case, you could literally have it say an entire film
Yeah.
by, right?
Yeah.
That way
A film,
everyone
just put a
knows.
film
Wore
by
all the hats.
the name. So this was not the first film with Billy Jack, J. Michael. This was the second film. So technically, this is kind of a sequel.
What?
So
Wait, what?
1967, J. Michael, there's a film called The Born Losers where Tom Laughlin plays the role of Billy Jack. And that was an even, I think, smaller independent film. He moves on to this movie called Billy Jack. And then after this, there are 2 more installments. The third one is called The Trial of Billy Jack. And the fourth one's called Billy Jack Goes to Washington.
Oh, ouch on the last title. I'm excited to actually check out The Trial. Does Daily Motion got that one? I'm gonna check out The Trial of Billy Jack. I'm kind of curious to see Billy Jack Begins too, which is a better title than whatever it was titled.
The Born Losers.
Time out. Did he write? Yeah. Right. What? Ouch. Did he write and direct and wear all the hats for all of these films?
I know he did for
the
third and the fourth. Let me look real quick. I'm not sure if he directed the first one.
Time out. So he was in a first film, someone else's film, and he liked that character so much that he then probably got permission, I'm assuming, took that character and wrote out a trilogy for him. I love this dude.
So
this is amazing.
I just looked. He directed the first movie. He did not write it. Someone else wrote the screenplay.
Okay.
So I would like, how does that work? If someone else writes the first script, doesn't he need to get their permission to like to use that character if it's not his character?
I would assume that that's all done good, great, and gravy. Is Billy Jack a big character in the first film? Do you know?
I didn't have a chance. I wanted to look at it. It says on IMDb.
Because if he's only in like a couple scenes and then he's like the director and then he takes this couple scene character and like blows him up into Billy Jack and the Trial of Billy Jack and then that awful title.
No, he's the lead. It's about him battling an outlaw motorcycle gang.
Yes.
And it came out way back in 67. So it was 4 years before the sequel came out. I don't know if it's considered a sequel because it's not. I think it's just the same character. So I think it's kind of like a Dirty Harry, where the movies aren't really related to each other very much.
Right.
It's just the same guy.
Right. Yeah.
Dirty Harry, by
Jack
the way.
Reacher.
Yeah. Dirty Harry, by the way, would also come out in 71 at the end of the year. So this predates Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, it's is that film number one grossing of 71?
What's the top
grossing film?
The top grossing film of 71 is Fiddler on the Roof. A musical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Musical. Yeah. I mean, I understand that. That's a lot larger audience than any Western has ever had.
So in 1971, we get, as you said before, A Clockwork Orange. We've got Dirty Harry. We have a James Bond movie with Sean Connery, Diamonds Are Forever. We have The French Connection with Gene Hackman. Billy Jack apparently did better throughout its long run that went into 73. It did better than all those movies. That's crazy.
Where did this guy go? Okay, we're not at that part of the podcast, but when we get there, I'm super excited to learn more about this guy. The more you tell me about him, I love this dude. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
if I was to do all this right now, there's no way this could happen. We're not set up at all right now for me to be able to go and write and direct and produce and do all my own thing and then be like, oh, hey, guess what? I'm number 2 on the box office. Check that.
Yeah, and distribute the movie yourself.
That's the big thing, right? How's anyone going to see it on my YouTube channel? Get out of here. Nope. Nope.
All right, so get this, J. Michael.
No box office.
Get this. There was a 5th movie of Billy Jack started in 1985 called The Return of Billy Jack. Parts of the movie were filmed. Yes. Laughlin suffered a head injury on the set during a stunt, and he had to go recover from that head injury. By the time he was all better, the funds of the movie had been depleted, and they were never able to finish it.
What about all the funds you made on this film? Bro, oh, that's a mismanaged finances. Although I'm sure you lost a lot on Billy Jack Goes to Washington because, bro, oh man, I don't even want to watch that one. You literally just stole that title and put your character's name in the front. Like, come on, man. It's better than that. Billy Jack Forever, I would have bought, right?
Like Batman.
Exactly. Oh man. That's really sad though. It's sad when any film gets started and then it can't at least get finished.
I mean, I guess they shot
I've been on the brink of a couple of those.
Yeah, I bet there was like an hour of the movie completed. So it's like, really, you couldn't do like 20 more minutes and finish it? Kind of crazy.
Stopping them from dropping it right now? I know that footage still exists. We got to get on them. Films at 50's got to get on them. This is the year. Put out the short. The Return of Billy Jack.
Yeah, I guess they released 2 of the scenes from the 86 Return of Billy Jack on like the website about Billy Jack, like in 2009, 2010. Like they released 2 completed scenes, but that's all that's been released. And Tom Laughlin passed away in 2013. So I don't think that movie's going to happen, unfortunately. So J. Michael, for years, Billy Jack was the highest grossing independent film ever. It was made on a budget of $800,000. By the end of 1973, it had grossed about $40 million.
That's what I'm saying. Where did all that money go? Like, look, in the film, they offer the kids at this school $1,000, Brian, $1,000 in 1969 to just tell them where this girl is. And I'm going, are you kidding me? No one is jumping at $1,000 in 1969. That's a lot of money right now. But in 1969, oh dear Lord, that Corvette that they trashed, $600. Get out of here. You could go buy it. Or no, they said $6,000, wasn't it? It was $6,000. But that's what I'm saying. Like a sixth of a Corvette to not just tell them where a girl is. Man, that's a big get. It's a big reward.
Okay, so I did say something wrong earlier. So it did get some distribution in 73. The 71 run was all Tom Laughlin putting it into
Gotcha.
theaters. 73, it did have a bigger studio behind it. So I guess that's where it was able to make a lot of that money. But even still, it's a very, very small film.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm still pretty shocked that you said it's number two. Like it's like yeah, in watching it, just the production value alone, I'm blown away. Yeah, and I'm curious too. Is a ticket to see this film the same price as a ticket to go watch Sean Connery, as it is to go watch a Kubrick film? Like,
That,
or or so many more people seeing this, and it's discounted somehow, and that's how you're getting that much more people to go see it. I don't know.
yeah,
Anyway,
maybe it's at the drive-in for like half the price, and then more and more people are going.
who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows?
I mean, I
Yeah, I
know
don't know.
what in the
But
early
it's
70s, how much did movie tickets cost? $1 or $2? I mean, it was pretty cheap back in the early 70s. Every year it would
yeah.
become
So you're
more and
saying we
more.
made $40 million? Wow.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, wow.
The
Yeah,
only
I'm
major
blown away.
nomination, the only major nomination for this movie was Dolores Taylor received a Golden Globe nomination for 1971 as the most promising newcomer actress. That was it. That was the only nomination.
Do
It
you
could have
think that
swept
that
the
was
Oscars, J.
like a
Michael.
scratch card? Check the box.
Best Picture of 1971,
um.
Billy Jack.
Then we would have heard of it though. Is the thing, man. Wow. Well, I mean, good for her. Like, to be honest with you, that kind of feels like some Academy toss. Just kind of throw a bone to a box office winner. Um, a little bit.
Yeah, they don't have that category anymore. They
Anyway,
don't have most promising actor anymore.
they shouldn't. Man, could you imagine all the weight being put on your shoulders? If I won an award like that, I'd be like, I guess I quit. Like, okay, cool. You're gonna set the standard there. I'm just gonna chill. Thanks.
If that was around,
Yeah. What a.
J. Michael, you could have been nominated for that for your performance in 96 Minutes, which was fantastic. And as a film, all of you should check out J. Michael Trautmann.
Should check out. I Here's the thing. You wonder too, right? The difference. Because I think of all the independent films that I've done, and that one's probably definitely up there as far as story, production value, how it was done, the risks that it took, and I think the reward that it got, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But not very many people saw it, and it wasn't released, and it didn't get any sort of real distribution. Um, it did all
Is
right in
there a
the festival
DVD or blue?
circuit.
Is there a DVD or Blu-ray of that movie?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I know that it's been sold to at least four of the other regions and has done all right.
Oh,
Um,
good.
I mean, David Oyelowo doing really well as an actor definitely helped it. Uh, but you wonder, right? Like, I'd love to look at the stats. How many films? How many independent films were shot and released and done? Right, all put together and put out to be viewed in 1971 versus how many were done in 2009, 2010. And obviously, right, we got that many more people. We got that many more filmmakers. We got that many more access to cameras to make said films. Um, and yeah, that math really crushes the ability for a film to get seen. But also within that then statistic, if you find those gems that are able to pull through and right,
Mm-hmm.
then I think those are the ones that become really huge and set those filmmakers and everyone on a different track, right? As far as in the industry.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There were fewer independent films made in the early 70s just because there wasn't as much easy access to equipment, to getting projects off the ground. You don't see a lot of independent films. Yeah.
Right. Now you
So,
can go get a degree at almost any blank film school, right?
yeah.
Like they've got one. So, right.
All right. My final piece of trivia about the movie, which I found interesting, is that did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yes.
So Quentin Tarantino and Brad Pitt used this film, Billy Jack, and Laughlin's performance as a major influence while developing Pitt's character, Cliff Booth, in Once Upon a Time in
I
Hollywood.
love it. That was one of the films that I was gonna mirror it to
Hmm.
for the modern, even though it's technically not really that modern, but it's made right now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, to be honest, now that you're saying that, there's a lot of mirrored stuff that I can see that some scenes and some stuff that he shot at that ranch with the dude riding with the horse. Even we were taking Brad
Hmm.
Pitt out of it. We can put some of that onto that dude too. That was very Billy Jack, right? That kid from the ranch, going in between and helping all the ladies and students, whatever, right? Um, that's awesome. That's a really fun piece of trivia. I can definitely see that influence in some of the weird spots, and yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So Tom Laughlin and his character of Billy Jack inspired an Academy Award winning performance. I just think it's funny. Like they're using this movie to inspire the character of Cliff Booth and Brad Pitt's performance, and then he wins the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Man, what a fun little add-on to this guy's legacy. Jeez,
Yeah.
seriously, like, wow. And I'll now go watch Billy Jack Goes to Washington just from that tidbit. I hate the title. I'll never get behind the title. I can't stand it. But I'm gonna watch it because it inspired Brad Pitt.
I don't know if they watched all of them. I like the idea of Tarantino sitting with Brad Pitt, like, okay, we're gonna watch all four of them.
I wouldn't doubt that Tarantino did though.
He
I
probably
wouldn't doubt
did.
it 1 second. Now Brad Pitt, did he watch all five or all four in some scenes?
I
Probably
think
not.
no, I think it
But
was the 71. Yeah.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, get the breadwinner and probably the one that features him the best. I can't imagine him doing much kung fu at the trial.
In
Um,
the courtroom.
I mean, right? You go to Washington and do kung fu maybe at like Washington Park. I don't know, but whatever. Um, that's what a fun piece of tidbit. It's good. I like that one.
All right, so that takes us to the movie, J. Michael. What did we think of Billy Jack as a movie?
My opinion has completely shifted now that I have all this trivia and knowledge of all the people that actually saw it. I'm over here sitting here when it started and it's telling me that it was like a student film. And you could tell just not only is a 70s film pretty obvious based on the film already, but you could tell that it just didn't have the production value behind it. I could tell it was an independent film right away. Um, as a story, uh, very, very, very strong character, and the characters that were developed in this film and that were brought to light were little fun sprinkles. I thought all of them. I thought it was overall, before I knew all the tidbits, I gave it a C+, but I'm going to give it a solid B now that I know all this stuff, to be honest with you. Because to really kind of put myself in a frame to be able to watch it and remember it again, and to know that the guy did everything. That's pretty amazing to know that you're setting up all these shots and you're doing all this stuff. And I mean, obviously, you're trusting someone to capture it. You, but yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so I turn this on as I do pretty much every movie for the podcast without doing my research first. I like to just watch the movie knowing nothing. I don't want to know what the story is. I don't want to know even sometimes who's in it. And then I do my research after so I can get like a genuine kind of experience and reaction from
Sure.
the movie. And yeah, for the most part, J. Michael, there were some moments here and there that I liked. I thought this movie overall was quite a mess, like
Mm.
tonally and story wise, all over the place. I'm like, is this a revenge movie? Is this like a political film? We have long stretches at the school and like at that meeting, and Billy Jack isn't even there. And I'm just like, what? Like, I feel like this movie needs more focus. Like, be a genre film or not be a genre film, but it wasn't quite focused enough for me to get fully involved. And it was only after I started doing my research into it that I started to appreciate the movie more. But as a whole, I would give it your initial C plus. I think that's my rating for this. Although I did admire some aspects to the movie, and I liked definitely some of the karate, the martial arts scenes were fun, in a very silly way.
That's what gave it the plus, no doubt.
But what didn't work for me is that so much of this movie is about hyping up this idea of peace. Everyone be peaceful. This was shot in 69, right? So there's a lot of like
Flower power.
flower power going on here. But then
Mm-hmm.
a third of the movie is all about karate, martial arts, shooting and killing people. There's a really vicious, awful rape scene. I was just trying to put my head around this movie. Like, what is Tom Laughlin trying to say here? I can't quite put my finger
His
on it.
character was saying, he constantly was calling out the white man, um, and saying, you know, like, oh, only the white man would want to see, would want things in writing, or to see things in writing so they could use it against him in trial or in court or whatever. So he's definitely has a point of view of saying, we've, as a country, as a race of white people, we have put down the Native Americans. That's definitely being said. That's one of the things being said. But then also, like you're saying, with the very 60s movement and the flower power coming off of the late 60s and 69, especially when this is being filmed, which is interesting. Um, it had way too much singing and group kumbaya stuff going on in it. I can understand that maybe a couple of times, and you're right. It was a mess. It was all over the place, and then just littered in misogyny and just toxic masculinity that yes, I think was very prevalent in film, in life, in everything. Right now, that will complain about what society is right now, and they should, rightly and justly so. There's still a lot of unjust things happening right now. But if we look back 50 years, oh my God, have we progressed so far?
Mm-hmm.
That dad's first instinct when his runaway daughter came back, he says it out loud. He closes the door and she's sitting there and he says it out loud. My first instinct is to beat the hell out of you. And I was like, oh, well, this sets the tone of what I'm about to watch. Great. Open fist palms her in the face after telling her she's pregnant and basically kind of goading him a little bit, saying I'm a slut. Um, Regardless, right? It threw me back into saying, remember, this is 71. This is a film being presented to an audience in 71. Um, and yeah, it's pretty amazing to be able to then come back to a bird's eye view and go, okay, well, 2021 is definitely leagues ahead of where 1971 was, at least in a lot of different aspects of society.
Oh, absolutely. We've talked about that on the podcast before, and especially with this movie, I feel like very little of this could translate to a movie today. Like if it were to be redone, I think
Right.
they would have to have a new approach. Maybe it could be,
Or set it back in a spot where it's okay, where it can be, right?
yeah, or set it
It
in the
seems to be almost
70s.
that's the only way to do it. Exactly.
Yeah.
It almost feels like now any filmmakers that want to say anything or do anything that is anything like those times, they have to put it there because it can't exist here. And it's not to say that anything in Hollywood's really going to allow any filmmakers to say any of those things, because not a lot of that stuff should be said. If you're not going to throw it back there for historical reasons, there's no real reason to throw it back there. Um, but yeah, no, you're right. None of this could, it just wouldn't play.
And I don't know if you felt this way, J. Michael, but I was not super on board with Tom Laughlin as an actor. I felt he was very stiff and not very charismatic. What did you think of him?
Yeah, he was cold. He he almost felt like, and this is so crazy to think of after watching it, and and honestly, with you asking me this question, it's almost like he doesn't want to be there
Yeah, that's a
as
good
an
point.
actor. And he also doesn't want to be there as Billy Jack. Like every situation he gets in, he's almost like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here teaching you a lesson your daddy should have taught you. I shouldn't be here cleaning up flour that this dude just dumped on these kids' faces. I shouldn't be here trying to let this school exist without people fucking with it. Um, but it also came across as I shouldn't be here on set right now doing this. And it was tough sometimes to want to watch Billy Jack do things, even though you knew that every scene was set up for it to be a brush fire that's, gets to a point to where Billy Jack has to come do something about it. Um, yeah, I agree with you. It was very Bronson though, right? It was very like I'm the tough guy, and that I think the scene, and knowing that that's his wife, and knowing that they wrote this together too,
Hmm.
that scene at the end where he's kind of in that barn or whatever, and it's his standoff before obviously the next film, Billy Jack's trial, um, where he's deciding, right, do I want to stand trial or do I want to like go out in a blaze of glory? Um, and they're all pleading with him. Um, that scene where she's like, "You're not thinking. You're only thinking about yourself. This is only about you and your hatred and all this stuff." Some of that hatred came out in him while he was acting, and it was hard to place where it belonged or who it was aimed at.
Hmm.
And it almost felt then aimed at himself, at the action of doing it. And yeah, it took me away from really caring about this guy in any sort of sense beyond the black and white on paper. What are you doing that's right versus wrong?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was pretty strong in the fight scenes, in the action moments. It was in the parts where he had to emote, where he was just
Mm-hmm.
very like still. And
Mm-hmm.
his wife at the time, Dolores Taylor, I thought did a great job in her role when she had to be emotional. But it would then cut to him, and he would just be looking at her like not really getting much out of him. I know
Right.
he's supposed to be kind of the stoic, mythical kind of figure, so it wouldn't make sense for him to be
Like a
breaking
cowboy.
down, but like a cowboy. But yeah, I'm like, really? This movie, this guy was what everybody was flocking to at the theater, right? It just doesn't
Right.
quite make sense to me.
It's the first Western kung fu racial divide,
Everything.
everything, man, that I've ever seen. To be honest with you, there was so much happening. And to I, the, now that you tell me that this was an inspiration for Once Upon a Time, that movie, if we really want to look at it, was messy too. It had a
Hmm.
director who knew how to take those messy things and string them together very well,
Exactly.
right?
Hmm.
But that film had so much going on too and was saying 12 different things. So yes, this is definitely an inspiration for that type of
One of the best scenes is right after the ice cream shop, right? And he's doing martial arts in that park, right? And it's like one
he
of
takes
those.
his shoes off, you guys. Look, I'm so mad that he's not alive anymore because it's a question I need answered from this guy. What's the thought process here? Because I understand doing it if you don't want to make noise or if you're going to get in the water. He does neither of it. He's in an open park. But I just thought it was so funny. He goes out and then yeah, takes on like 20 guys.
It's like that Jackie Chan thing, right? Where they all wait, so it's just one at a
Oh yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
He's never fighting like 10 of them at once. But then he gets, he
I'm glad at
goes,
least that they gave us I'm glad at least that they gave us the spot where, right, there's multiple guys holding you and you're getting punched, and we've got rose pasta sauce being used for the blood throughout this film, uh, which every time I saw blood in this film, it took me out of it for a second because I had to go just cringe just a little bit and remember that it's an independent film. Um,
it shows
but yeah,
him,
at
it
least
shows him bloody at the end of that scene, and that blood is orange.
yeah, it's definitely off.
The
It's
color of
definitely
of
off.
the golf shirt I'm wearing right now is the
Yep,
color of
exactly.
Billy Jack's blood.
Yep. Yeah.
You'd think they could get that right, J. Michael. Like, well, let's maybe use like red food coloring.
I
No,
mean, jeez, ketchup at least. Like,
just
I mean,
just
if you're gonna
ketchup.
go cheap, just come on, like, guys, it's not tough. But yeah, I'm way more impressed with this guy as every other hat that he wore than I am as his portrayal of Billy Jack. But geez, man, to be able to pull off 5 films with the same character and make all that money. But no, as an actor, I didn't give him necessarily that great of a grade. I think I gave him a 6 out of 10. Which, yeah, what is that, a D? Yeah,
That's that's
it's not
that's a
that great.
D. That's a D minus, but it's
Yeah,
better than an
so
F.
way better than an F, way better than an F, and he's got high B pluses and some A's for, geez, for everything he did post production. Like man, because he got that film out, and that's pretty impressive.
You make a good point, J. Michael, about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that movie is kind of balancing 6 different things or more, but Tarantino has the experience and to kind of like modulate that tone and the rhythm in the editing room. I feel like Billy Jack would be a better film if he had co-wrote it, put it together, acted in the film, whatever, but he got a different guy to come on board or a girl to come on board and direct the movie and give it a vision of some kind. I think he's just it's too much. Some directors can do it all. I feel like he needed one of these major, behind the scenes places. I think direction was the place he could have used another pair of eyes from somebody else to make this a little bit more entertaining, rhythmically sensible movie where you can really follow it from beginning to end. He's a very handsome guy, but I just did not feel the charisma that you get from like a Sean Connery as Bond or Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry, or even Charles Bronson. And he made a lot of revenge films in the 70s. It's just not quite coming through with Laughlin. So maybe he could have directed it and hired someone else to play that main role. But I feel like he was not on board in doing that. He wanted to be in front of the camera too, along with his wife.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these are his projects, so he's got every right to do that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think someone else behind the camera and with a direction would have definitely helped the not only the film but the character even. You're right. It could have colored him with a lot more depth than what was given. It was very 2D solid performance, very stiff. Yeah, not much range.
Yeah. But there were some things I liked. I thought the last 30 minutes, I thought it picked up and it had more focus, and I got more involved in the story and in the performances. When he's in that barn at the end, as you mentioned, and it's almost like Night of the Living Dead in the last 20 minutes. Like he's in that barn and you got all these people outside. They want to come in there, and grab his head. Like they're like done with this guy because of the revenge that Billy Jack is enacting in that last half hour. So I thought that was really strong. I liked, indie film in the 70s is really fascinating. It almost has the look and feel of like a documentary. That's the case of horror films like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 74 and Wes Craven's first movie from 72, Last House on the Left, which is a really terrifying movie because it feels like everything in the movie is actually happening. So like, for example, the rape scene in Billy Jack was shot very much like the rape scene in Last House on the Left. It's very grainy and awkward and really hard to watch. And the independent aspect of the movie, I think, brings a lot to that moment too, to make it so vile.
Yeah, it was it had visceral moments to it that I think could have added more depth to it if it would have had a director that wanted to go that route with it, to make the scene itself, the rape scene itself, didn't equate in my mind emotionally coming across for Billy Jack, or even in how he went through his revenge. There was no, it was almost like when he went to go karate chop that kid to death, it was almost like that hatred that he's talking about in the last scene wasn't even present. There was no, oh, the woman that I love, you raped her. And that doesn't necessarily need to be said out of the character's mouth, but none of that was happening in that scene whatsoever. It was so cut and dry, almost like the rape was the straw that broke the camel's back for this guy, for him to finally go and like kill you. Even though the almost raped the student that we had just seen before he made the dude drive his Corvette into the lake, right? Was kind of we're giggling over here about how we're going to punish this kid about the bullshit he just tried to pull, which I'm sure is happening on an every day at this time in this whatever Arizona town, having these problems with the Native American people and obviously this Billy Jack character. And so it felt like this time, and like almost any time really, that it's just being tossed aside and doesn't seem to really matter. And yet you're making it matter so much that you're going to go on this rampage, right? That ends you up in a barn with all the police after you. But that emotion was lost on me. You're right, from Billy Jack and from the film itself.
Well, I think part of it is the lack of focus. We have lots and lots of scenes in the first 45 minutes of the Freedom School, and We get that one girl who I believe is never seen again. We get like 3 minutes of her on the guitar singing. And I'm like, what?
Right.
I'm like, what does this have to do with anything?
Yeah.
This movie
Yeah.
is
Someone call
almost
the
2 hours
editor.
long. It's almost 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And it could have been 90 minutes. I don't really understand why, especially for an independent film of $800,000, you think it would be important for you to keep it brief. I don't know. Right?
This boy gets on this horse to like pretend to be Billy Jack, and everyone was like, "No, don't do it, don't do it," and like breaks his leg or something. And it's like I didn't understand the reason that was there at all. Like it doesn't. He's already a pacifist kid. We've already seen that in the ice cream shop. We don't need to debilitate him anymore for the white people in town to hate on him for thinking that he got the lieutenant police officer's daughter pregnant. Like it just felt so out of nowhere. The scene of him falling off of a horse, which makes me wonder if that's what Tom Laughlin was trying to do, film some stupid didn't need to be seen stunt, and you hurt yourself and couldn't finish your film, and that's awful.
So the other thing I wanted to mention that I liked about the movie was the actor played the sheriff with like kind of like the reddish face. I thought he was the best of like the villains. I thought he was really intimidating and he had a great presence. I thought whenever he was in a scene, I was totally invested. I was kind of disappointed that, spoiler alert, he is, done away with just a quick shot in the head and then that's it. I was like, oh, come on, we're not going to get a martial arts scene with him. Let's have a 5-minute scene where they're battling it out at the end. That would have been great. He's just shot in the head and that's it.
Might go down as my favorite headshot in film. They did a little red dot on his head, and it was such a quick cut. Oh man, it's one to watch. It's a headshot to watch because it's it made me giggle. And it was a great shot. Way to go, Billy Jack.
And the rapist he killed just with his hand, right? Didn't he kill the rapist with just his hand?
Yeah.
He just did a martial
Hard
arts.
chop to the throat. Yeah.
Yeah. So my last question for you about the movie, J. Michaels, we talked about this a little bit, if they were to make Billy Jack in 2021, if they took elements of this story, how would they do it now? How would the film be changed to today, do you think?
I think one of his very first lines in the film is so relevant to right now and today and everything that happened in 2020. It was a great quote. Uh, he says, because they're out there, there's the police officer that you're talking about is out for a lot of people who, for lack of a better term, run this city. They're the rich people, the rich white people in the city, and they're shooting wild mustangs, horses, and that's illegal. And we've already gotten this exposition from the film. They've been told, and this guy's out there doing it anyways. He's part of the law. I think that in itself can be taken into right now and be turned into a film. You can take all the elements from the lines in the sand that Billy Jack is drawing. And he said many times, he's like, look, I want to live in a world where all the laws are just for everyone and everyone's treated the same under those laws. And, even to his wife or his love in the film, he's saying, you show me a spot where man is loving one another and I'll never be violent to anyone ever again. And it's a problem that the hero and humans, right, have had ever since we've been here, right? Violence versus pacifism, right? Trying to understand and nurture versus force or oppress, right? Or murder, kill. Um, and at what point and what levels are we putting which one to what, right? Like for me personally, I think that there are lines and there are things that people can do in this life that for in my opinion, they've turned in their card to be a part of society anymore. Um, and I think that that's what Billy Jack is trying to get across here. He's trying to say, right, I'm not going to deal with the unjust, and there's always going to be unjust. So I think that can fit anywhere, but definitely not when we're talking about you know Black Lives Matter versus police brutality versus overall corruption anywhere, but especially since it's modern now, and we'll put it towards law enforcement, right? I think that you could take it and put it towards anything. Now it's going to be real difficult to do, right? In today's age, what type of non superhuman martial artist kung fu guy. So yeah, you looked at like Luke Cage though, the series. That's and can take on corruption without having to worry about right the repercussions of being harmed or hurt. Uh, but yeah, as far as modern, um, that's something that you can definitely take from it. His resolve of saying this is what's right, this is what's wrong. I'm on this side, and if you're not on this side, then I'm gonna fight you.
Hmm.
And I think that can almost kind of go anywhere.
Those are excellent points. Yeah, I would just, you know, I agree with all of that. And I would only add on, I think the film made now, especially if it was a film, it would have to just be more focused. I think we would have like the revenge element be a play a bigger role in the movie. I don't think you'd have things like the Freedom School and some of these things. I think you would have more of an emotional connection to Billy Jack in a newer film. Be curious to like think about who would they get to play Billy Jack in 2021. I'd like be curious to know like what actors would be tossed around. You could do it. You could do it, J. Michael.
You know who this guy reminded me of?
Yeah.
No, I play the pieces of shit on the other side of the line.
No.
And I definitely wouldn't want to play Bernard,
Oh
or his
yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I'd be
It's a good
able to
idea.
fit in here. Um, who the actor I forget his name, but he was in jeez, it was on USA. Come on, he kind of
On
looks like this guy. He was like a secret agent type guy.
on
I'll find it. I'll
USA.
find it right now. Yeah, it was happy. No, 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 no. I'll find it. I'll find it. Because this guy reminds me of this actor as far as how his look is,
Okay.
kind of how he acts. And I think if this actor knew kung fu or was taught any of it somehow, like really got into it, Keanu Reeves style, he might be able to do some stuff. Um,
I would be,
Let me look
I
him up.
feel like in the next 10 years, I mean, I think a lot of people just don't know what Billy Jack is, so that might not bring it. But I feel like Billy Jack, there's enough awareness of it that maybe at some point in time, someone might want to, bring Billy Jack to an Amazon limited series or, a Netflix show. Like I feel like there's enough recognition of that name, especially for older audiences. Someone might resurrect it at some point. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, someone could, right? I
I don't know. Like so Tom Laughlin died in 2013. Does he I'm assuming after his death, like is it possible for someone else to obtain the rights to the character? I don't know how that whole all works, but
I would assume that it went to his wife.
his
You just
wife
gotta
who
talk to her, right?
she's not, yeah, she died too. When did she pass away? I think she died after he did.
Oh,
She died in 2018.
did they have kids? Because
I
that's
don't
probably right.
I don't know. I mean I'm assuming they did. I don't know. I did actually I looked up a lot about Laughlin. I didn't see anything about kids in my research, but maybe they probably did.
I mean, are films being made now with an original thought and an original story? Isn't
No.
aren't all films nowadays just taken back and redone?
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, if we really want to say it, once upon
pre-awareness is the thing, right? Pre-awareness. If nobody
yeah,
knows what the movie is, the thinking is nobody will go. They have to know
Burn
what it is.
Notice. That's the show I'm talking about. The dude
Oh,
from Burn Notice,
Burn Notice. I never saw that.
Jeffrey Donovan.
Jeffrey Donovan. We
Okay,
have our
Jeffrey
new Billy
Donovan.
Jack.
Look him up right now. That's Billy Jack, bro. That's Billy Jack. I'm telling you, that's the new Billy Jack. That's it right there. And I'm trying to see who I would cast as Jean. I don't know, Gwyneth Paltrow. Let's give her some stuff.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Yeah, she needs work.
We got to get an A-lister in there.
So
Jeffrey
I'm
Donovan.
looking at
Jeffrey Donovan.
the poster of Burn Notice, and I would much rather watch a
And
movie
it's
where
Billy Jack.
I would much rather watch a movie where Bruce Campbell plays Billy Jack.
Stop it.
Do it.
Bruce Campbell can be the
He could be
kind
the
of good
sheriff.
cop. Yeah, exactly. The kind of okay one who's like, well, they're breaking the law and we can't get a conviction in this town, and I'm just a tool. Yeah, Bruce Campbell could do that one probably.
So
Not
yeah,
that he's a tool, but he can play that
I
really
would
well.
give this like 2 stars out of 4, like a C plus. Like if you're interested in early 70s film, this was really popular for a few years, and it's kind of important, I think, if you're interested in film history, to look at really popular films and kind of ask yourself why, and why did this strike a chord with audiences at the time. It shocks me that this was more popular at a time where we had some much bigger films, definitely more famous movies around this time between 71 and 73. But it's an interesting film. I don't know if I will look at the other films of this franchise. Maybe The Trial, because that was the other one that was successful from 74. I might look at that one. But Washington, I think I might skip that one. I'd be curious to see what he would have made in the 80s, because that was a very big time for action films, like with Schwarzenegger and Stallone and Die Hard and all that stuff. I'd be curious to know what that would have been. But if it was like a smaller film, I don't know if it would have been able to stand up to all of those big action films of the 80s. All right, so that takes us to our final 2 segments. The first one is called the Divine Double Feature. That's where we pick a more modern film to pair with our main movie of today, which is Billy Jack. So, did we both go with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Was kind of the one that made the most sense to me, especially since it influenced the Brad Pitt character. Did you have a couple other films that we have not talked about that you might pair this one with?
As a film of a hero who's basically fighting for his way of how things should be and how life should be and the freedom of people to be that way. I thought immediately of any sort of Jack Reacher film. That's what I thought of when I was watching Billy Jack. He felt like, because that's what Jack Reacher is, and not necessarily. I'm not. I read the books too, so I'm not necessarily basing it so much on Tom Cruise. Love him though, Tom Cruise. Uh, but a guy who's basically saying, look, violence is my answer. These guys aren't going to listen to your songs. They don't care about your skits in the park. They've got hate, and it's directed this way, and they don't want to resolve it or do anything positive about it or change it. So I'm going to change it for them with my fists. Ip Man, right? I thought of that too.
Yep.
A guy who's got a way of, this is how I teach kung fu. And yes, I went kung fu because there's so much kung fu in this film. And he's like, this is how I want to teach it. And everyone else doesn't think that this is the way it should be taught, and they want to come at me about it and get all pissed off. And I'm gonna fight, right, physically them to have the right to have my way be here. And I think if we're gonna try to nail in on what this film Billy Jack is trying to say, I think at the end that's what it's trying to say, right? It's at the end of the 60s. It's basically saying, look, we get it, white man, you don't like free love and all this other stuff, but like what you've done to the Native Americans, we're not going to allow you to do that to us. You can't just push us aside and not listen and not whatever. And then there's Billy Jack bridging the gap with his fists.
Those are great choices.
And flying kicks.
Yeah, if there was one other one I would recommend to our listeners, it's one that I feel like came and went. It's a movie I remember liking when I eventually saw it in high school. It's also kind of a revenge thriller with an actress who never made another thriller outside of this movie, and that's Sally Field. This is from 1996, the movie Eye for an Eye, where Kiefer Sutherland plays the villain, and he rapes and kills her daughter, and she goes on a revenge mission for the movie. Sally Field, of all people. And it's really intense, really well directed by John Frankenheimer. It kind of came and went. I don't think critics liked it at the time. I feel like it's not really discussed or mentioned anymore, but I always kind of liked it.
This is my first time hearing of it.
It's a great lead performance by Sally Field in a genre I don't believe she ever did before or since. That's like a really dark thriller. And Ed Harris plays her husband. It's got a really good cast. Kiefer Sutherland is at his most vile and awful in a way I don't think he's been before or since too. And so Eye for an Eye from the mid 90s, I would recommend. It's kind of like a really good kind of revenge thriller. Not so much like Billy Jack, but it's, Billy Jack came out 50 years ago and Eye for an Eye came out 25 years ago. So that's at the halfway point, right? One to look at from that era might be Eye for an Eye. And then the newer movie, I think that makes the most sense, would be Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Do it.
Or if we're gonna stay on a revenge film, we can go Tarantino and watch some Kill Bill.
which is
Both
my
volumes,
favorite.
but
Yeah.
just volume one's got plenty of revenge.
Kill Bill is one of those movies where if it's on TV, I'll find myself just watching the rest of it. Like it draws me in every time. Like probably
The colors.
his best like shot film, like the
colors.
cinematography in Kill Bill is so striking. Like it's just looks incredible. So the final segment is Beyond the Flick. That's where we talk about a figure that has something to do with the movie. I thought we'd end here by I wanted to say a little bit more about Tom Laughlin. So I don't know how much you know about this guy. We've talked about him a little bit throughout the episode today, but he was not only a filmmaker, J. Michael, he was also an author, an educator, and an activist. He married Dolores Taylor, who plays, the main woman in Billy Jack. He married her in 1954. And they were married all the way to his death in 2013. So they were together a long time. His unique promotion of the trial.
How old were they when they got married? Holy crap.
What, probably in their 20s? So he's 40 the year that Billy Jack comes out.
40?
Yeah, he looked younger than that. He looked good. He didn't. I thought he was like early 30s.
Wow.
He was like late 30s when he shot.
He did. Well, I guess if you're a Green Beret and you keep in shape, you can do yourself some wonders.
Exactly. So Tom Laughlin's unique promotion of the trial of Billy Jack, the 1974 film, was a major influence on film marketing at the time. It was like the first movie that had TV trailers of the movie on television during national news. And on opening day of the movie, they were like just blasting the 30-second ads on TV all throughout opening day. Was something that wasn't really done until the trial of Billy Jack in 74. So that was an influence on film marketing. So this is smart guy.
This guy's such a pioneer. Look at him go. Yeah, seriously. He was a little bit before his time, huh?
Mm-hmm. But he wasn't always making movies. In the early 60s, he put his film career on hold to start a Montessori preschool in Santa Monica, which became the largest school of its kind in the United States. He started that with his wife. Wow. Like, he didn't make films for like 5 years. He was like developing this school in Santa Monica. Okay. Kind of interesting.
Does it still exist?
I believe it does. Yeah, I think it did. Amazing. Later on, J. Michael, he sought the president of the United States 3 times. He was a candidate for president in 1992, 2004, and 2008.
Stop it. What? What?
Yep.
What? I want to go back and vote for him in 2004. What?
He ran.
That's amazing.
He ran in 2004 as a Republican and in 2008 as a Democrat.
Oh my God. Gotta try them both. I love it.
Give it.
This guy.
And then he went on.
He ran in 2008, but died in 2013.
2013. So he wouldn't have made it all 8 years. Yeah.
No, not at all. That's crazy talk.
And later on, he wrote like nonfiction books about psychology and cancer when he was older. I mean, this guy, I mean, it's perfectly aligned with the lack of focus in Billy Jack, and that this guy's life is just all over the place, right? He's just he's just going with what inspires him day to day, right?
I absolutely love it. I got to start working out hardcore and learning some Kung Fu, because when I get to be 40, I probably won't look 40 either. And I'm going to do this dude's life. I'm going to do a biopic on this guy.
Oh, it'd be a fascinating movie. A movie about like this guy's life,
about Tom,
I think would be great.
Man, I'm saying you go through the school and then being an actor and pushing his own film and doing all this other stuff, hurting his head, doing some dumb stunt, and then being like, oh man, you know what I actually got when I hit my head? I got an epiphany. I'm about to get into politics.
After
1992.
The 4th film was called Billy Jack Goes to Washington, right? So I'm assuming by the late 70s, he was thinking about that. So stupid.
Oh man, Tom Laughlin goes to Washington. I love it.
I almost feel like if they were to make a film of Billy Jack now, it would be like a documentary about the life of Tom Laughlin. I feel like would make the most sense. Would be really interesting.
Yeah, that would probably play would be really interesting.
Because
No
he
doubt.
was like he was an actor in the 50s. He was on a lot of television series. He was in a film called The Delinquents, a thriller that Alfred Hitchcock was a big fan of.
Wow. Uh-huh.
And he's in the movie Gidget from the late 50s that was very popular at the time. His character was named
Wow.
Loverboy.
Nice.
And
That's a good
after
character
Billy
to
Jack
have.
in 71, J. Michael, he makes one more film that's not about Billy Jack. And that's in 1975, a movie called The Master Gunfighter. He directs, he acts in, but it's not Billy Jack, it's a different character. But it is kind of
I kind
sad.
of feel like I'm gonna find that movie and watch it and still think that it's Billy Jack. Like while I'm watching it.
It is kind of sad to me though that his final film project was the fifth installment that never got finished. That seems to it just that rubs me the wrong way. It's like, oh come on. An hour of the movie was completed. God, it I can't even imagine like your last project after a 40, 50-year career.
Well, and not only
40-year
that,
career
right?
doesn't
Yeah,
get finished. Ugh. Just
and you
hurts it.
obviously got a bunch of money to go on all these campaigns, so you couldn't get
Yeah.
money together to like finish
He
your
couldn't
movie.
just
Get out
you
of here.
think if he had an hour of footage in the can, he could have just funded the rest of it himself, right? If he had that kind of money, I don't know. I mean, maybe he was
Well,
a different place in
if
the
this
80s.
film cost $800,000, these guys had no idea how to spend their cash. I already know that. An hour and 53 minutes, and that's what you got for $800,000? No. There's no names. There's no names in it. There's no real equipment being used. The production value is nothing. No
Mhm.
way. $800,000. What did you do with it? Must have been really good craft services because I don't know what's
They
going
made
on.
some really good
You must have
lunches.
had these actors up in like 5-star hotels.
But yeah, so at the so ridiculous. At the end of the 70s, J. Michael, we get Halloween, my favorite horror film directed by John Carpenter, and that film cost about $350,000. That would go on to gross like 60 million, was in 78, 79, the highest grossing independent film of all time, was at the end of the 70s. But that's a movie that cost only $350,000, but looks much more striking, better cinematography, tighter story. In
Polished.
every way, it's
Yep.
way more polished than Billy Jack is. And that
Mm-hmm.
film cost more than double 10 years prior almost in 69. So kind of interesting.
I think a lot of us can quickly forget that back then they're using real film. So I have no idea how many rolls this dude wasted. Like honestly, and I was thinking this when we were watching the first 3 minutes of the film is this montage of these
Horses.
Mustangs
Yeah, the Mustang.
being being corralled and it's beautiful. Geez, it really is, but it's so unnecessary. And like there's a shot where all the Mustangs are coming directly at camera and are like splitting off and stuff, and it's like it's probably the best shot of the film, and it's 2 seconds in a montage while Coven sings their awful song to start this film, and yeah, you forget how much did this guy spend on how many takes are you doing, how long did it take to film all this stuff, but yeah, they definitely didn't have a whole lot. You already saw that he was messy as far as an actor, as far as a director, as far as kind of a writer. Um, so I'm not surprised if the budget got a little out of hand.
But at the end of the day here, J. Michael, I mean, what a feat to not only write, direct, produce, act in your own movie, but to get it in theaters for people to see and have it be this huge moneymaker, biggest independent film in the early 70s. Just that alone, that's really impressive. And we got to give him props for that because that's
I'm
fantastic.
saying, no doubt, no doubt. And then just throw it all away and say, nope, I'm gonna go make real change by being a politician. And here's the thing, you know that no one knows about him or really heard about him or remembers him from any of those elections because he was probably a dude who went in there just like Billy Jack and was like, here's the lines I'm drawing, here's what's right and here's what's wrong. And everyone was like, nah, this is America. We fly in the gray zone. And if you don't want to play that game, you don't get to be president. And that's exactly how it went.
Exactly.
I'm super impressed with this guy. I mean, geez, I feel bad that I'm not in like high school anymore and don't have to do some like report on someone because I'd be like, guys, let's talk about Tom. We need to talk about Tom real quick. Here's a little snippet that I found online from this movie called Billy Jack. Look at this guy. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I'm blown away by this guy. I'm super impressed. Anyway,
All right, J. Michael, that takes us to the end here. Thanks so much for being on Film at 50 today. Is there anywhere that our listeners can find you online, or if you have anything to promote, now would be the time to tell us.
oh geez, I've got a podcast, an episodic serial podcast that's coming out called The Bystanders. Follow me at JMac the Kid everywhere, and I can direct you on where to check that out and listen to it when it gets released. It's coming out soon. It's got Kristen Chenoweth in it, and it's really fun. Other than that, man, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I think I really enjoyed the podcast so much more than I enjoyed this movie. Like,
Yeah.
and learning about this movie and you telling me all this stuff and the research that you did really made me appreciate this whole experience a lot more. It was great, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, thanks for being here, Jim Michael. And thanks to all of you for listening. You can catch us online at filmat50.com. Until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.